Imagine this. You're sitting alone in a quiet room, no noise, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. And yet, you feel it. That restless ache behind your ribs, that invisible pressure on your chest. You can't quite name it, but it lingers. You're not in danger, you're not in pain, but somehow you are suffering. Now rewind. Picture another version of yourself, sleep-deprived, overworked, grinding through meaningless tasks day after day. You tell yourself it's for a better future, but you dread waking up. You drag yourself through routine, through obligation, through numbness. You're surviving, but barely. The suffering here is louder, more obvious, but it's still suffering. Here's the paradox no one likes to talk about. You will suffer either way. In stillness or chaos, success or stagnation, isolation or love, suffering is there. It's baked into the human condition like breath. Avoiding it only changes its costume. So the question is not, how do I avoid pain? The real question is, what kind of pain is worth choosing? Is your suffering leading somewhere, or is it just circling an invisible drain? Are you in pain because you're becoming more, or because you're running from becoming anything at all? And if you must carry a burden, shouldn't it at least be one that builds you? Because one way or another, you will suffer. The only choice you truly have is what you suffer for. Now let's go deeper. You live in a world that whispers a lie so softly, so constantly, that you don't even realize it's shaping your every decision. Suffering is failure. The moment you feel pain, discomfort, resistance, you're told something is wrong. You're not aligned, not healed, not in flow. The algorithm wants you happy. Advertisements want you comfortable. Friends want you agreeable. And culture wants you sedated. But what if that pain isn't a sign of failure? What if it's a signal of aliveness? Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Yet today we anesthetize at the slightest discomfort, through phones, through dopamine, through scrolling, through fake spiritualism. We chase a hollow idea of happiness while our deeper self, the one that aches to grow, slowly rots from neglect. Why? Because real growth demands confrontation, and confrontation is terrifying. When you avoid pain, you're not escaping it, you're merely trading one kind for another. You exchange the pain of discipline for the pain of regret, the pain of solitude for the pain of codependence, the pain of facing your truth for the pain of performing a lie. You still suffer, but now it's for nothing. Nietzsche didn't see suffering as something to eliminate, he saw it as fuel. To live is to suffer, he said. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. But meaning requires responsibility, and responsibility feels heavier than we like. That's why modern society teaches you to cope, not confront, to escape, not engage, and so we suffer in circles. We binge on distractions, we chase approval, we fear boredom like death itself, not because silence is painful, but because in silence we hear ourselves. And what we hear terrifies us. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that we are condemned to be free. That freedom means we must choose who we become. But choosing means risking. Choosing means letting go. Choosing means killing off every life we might have lived so that one life, your real life, can stand. But many would rather suffer predictably than live dangerously. Many would rather break quietly than rebuild loudly. Aldous Huxley once warned that the future wouldn't be controlled by pain, but by pleasure. That we'd be conquered not by fear, but by comfort. We wouldn't be whipped into submission, we'd be entertained into extinction. And in some sense, he was right. Today's suffering isn't loud and sharp, it's subtle. Lingering, numb, it creeps in when you've done nothing wrong. It comes in the form of apathy, disconnection, meaninglessness. Arthur Schopenhauer saw existence itself as suffering. Desire creates pain, fulfillment breeds boredom. We oscillate between them like prisoners swinging between two cells. But even he admitted there is one way out, will. The will to rise above the animal, the automatic, the addiction to comfort, the will to create meaning where none is given. And Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz, offered perhaps the clearest answer of all. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. This is the shift, this is the crack in the illusion. It's not that suffering is optional, it's that suffering without direction is hell. But suffering with direction, that's transformation. So what is the hidden problem? It's not that you suffer, it's that you suffer for nothing. For Instagram validation, for paycheck survival, for relationships that cage your spirit, for a life that isn't even yours. You suffer, but it doesn't mean anything, and meaning is oxygen for the soul. You don't notice it at first. The slow drift, the dull ache, the low hum of discontent that plays under every task, every conversation, every scroll. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It says, this isn't it, but it's too late to turn around. That's the quiet tragedy of meaningless suffering. It disguises itself as normal life. You wake up and check your phone before your feet hit the floor. You work a job that doesn't light a single neuron on fire. You laugh at jokes that don't land. You say, I'm fine, when your spirit is begging to scream. You go through the motions. You are alive, technically, but something inside you is dead. And that death, it didn't come from trauma. It didn't come from failure. It came from passively enduring a life that never asked anything real of you. This is the unseen consequence of suffering for the wrong reasons. You start to believe this is all there is. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. When you experience enough unchangeable pain, your mind stops trying to escape. You no longer resist, you just adapt. Your dreams shrink to fit your circumstances. You trade curiosity for certainty, ambition for approval, self-respect for stability. But there's something even more sinister beneath it. When you suffer without purpose, your brain rewires itself for fear. Neuroscience shows that chronic, meaningless stress strengthens the amygdala, the fear center, and weakens the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason and future planning. Translation? The longer you suffer without meaning, the more reactive, impulsive, and short-sighted you become. You lose vision, you lose patience, you lose you. And culturally, we reward this slow death. We call it being realistic. We tell people to lower expectations, to be grateful for what they have, even if what they have is soul rot. We label dreamers as naive. We medicate the symptoms instead of questioning the system. Modern life is a maze built to distract you from the fact that you're in a cage. And every time you choose easy over meaningful, you reinforce the bars. That's how the trap works. It doesn't break you with pain, it seduces you with comfort. You'll suffer for the algorithm. You'll suffer for your image. You'll suffer for a version of you that's palatable to people you secretly don't even like. And all the while, your soul will scream in the background, is this really what I'm here for? The longer you stay in that loop, the more foreign your real self begins to feel. You forget what lit you up. You forget the thrill of risk. You forget what it felt like to choose pain with your eyes open, because it meant something. And in that forgetting, you slowly begin to disappear. You become a reflection of everyone else's expectations, a mirror with no image of its own. And then one day, you wake up, and you're not angry, you're not sad, you're not afraid, you're just empty. Not because you failed, but because you never chose anything worth suffering for. And what is a life if not the story of what you were willing to suffer for? You've been told to avoid pain, to sidestep discomfort, to build a life padded with ease, designed for efficiency, optimized for peace of mind. But peace isn't the absence of suffering. Peace is alignment with a suffering that makes you stronger. And now comes the rebellion. You don't break free by escaping pain. You break free by choosing it, intentionally, consciously, and unapologetically. The same pain that numbs you when it's meaningless becomes fuel when it's chosen. the pain of waking up early to build your craft, the pain of telling the truth even when it breaks an image, the pain of walking away from comfort for something greater. These are not signs of failure, they are scars of purpose. This is the rebellion. Stop suffering passively and start suffering for something that matters. Viktor Frankl, who endured the unfathomable depths of human cruelty, emerged with this revelation: those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. He didn't say avoid the how, he said anchor it to a why so deep, so soul-rattling that pain becomes a companion, not a curse. The moment you start suffering for the right reason, you become dangerous. Why? Because you can't be manipulated by pleasure anymore. You can't be bought with convenience. You can't be controlled by fear. You have become something rare, a human with direction. And directed suffering, that's the birth of personal power. Take Nietzsche, misunderstood but precise. He didn't glorify suffering, he glorified the one who transforms through it. His Übermensch wasn't immune to pain, he was forged by it. Like a blade hammered over fire, shaped not despite resistance, but because of it. Look at every revolutionary, every artist, every mystic. They chose pain, they chose loneliness over belonging, creation over comfort, principle over popularity. Malcolm X chose it, so did Simone Weil, so did Epictetus, who was a slave and still taught that the soul is free when it chooses its chains wisely. And what about you? You break free not by fleeing your suffering, but by confronting it with a weapon: intention. Choose your pain like a warrior chooses his wounds, carefully, honorably, and for something greater than survival. Start small if you must. Wake up an hour earlier to write, to train, to sit in silence. Speak the truth when it shakes your relationships. Say no when yes feels easier. Walk away from fake pleasure, even when your bones crave it. This is how rebellion begins, not with noise, but with quiet defiance. Each act of chosen pain is a brick in the foundation of your future self. Each day you suffer for meaning, you step further away from the machine and closer to your soul. Because comfort will never save you, only courageous suffering will. So ask yourself, what am I willing to be broken for? What hill is worth dying on? What fire will I step into, not to be destroyed, but to be reborn? That's your rebellion. That's your way out. Here it is, the part you've been waiting for, the final click, the hard truth that doesn't wrap everything in a bow, but slices it open. You will suffer, but suffering is not the enemy. Meaningless suffering is. That's the truth that most of society hides, that motivational cliches water down, and that cheap comfort tries to mask. It's not about living without pain. It's about realizing that pain is the price of becoming. Every version of you, every wiser, deeper, freer version, is buried beneath a layer of suffering you've been taught to avoid. But here's the twist. If you avoid that suffering, you also avoid yourself. Not metaphorically, literally. You were born with a seed inside you, a calling, a direction, a truth. But seeds don't bloom in sunshine alone. They crack in darkness. They burst under pressure. You cannot birth a higher self without a labor of pain. And most people, they die before ever being born, because they feared the contractions, because they feared the fire. The ultimate truth is this: suffering is sacred when you give it purpose. Not in a masochistic way, not in a performative way, in a transformative way. Carl Jung called it the privilege of a lifetime to become who you truly are. But that privilege has a toll, and the toll is pain. Pain from confronting your shadow, pain from abandoning false selves, pain from walking alone. And yet, when you suffer for something that reflects your soul, your suffering becomes a bridge. You're not just in pain, you're crossing over. You're not just hurting, you're becoming holy. That is the metamorphosis most never reach. They try to cut the chrysalis open early and call it flight, but real wings grow through tension. Why do the most deeply rooted people often have the deepest scars? Why do those with the brightest wisdom often walk with limp? It's not coincidence, it's initiation. The fire that burns your ego makes room for your essence. This is not romantic, it's not clean, it's bloody, it's brutal, and yet it is the only kind of suffering that redeems itself. Arthur Schopenhauer, bleak as he often was, understood this. He believed existence was suffering, yes, but also that through art, through will, through conscious striving, we transcend that suffering. Not eliminate it, transcend it, carry it with dignity, with direction, with defiance. It is here, in this space, that something miraculous happens. You stop fearing pain, not because you enjoy it, but because now it serves you. Now it's working for you. Now it's chiseling you into something no soft path could ever create. And suddenly, regret becomes more terrifying than pain. Comfort feels like a coffin, and mediocrity, a betrayal. This is the liberation no one talks about. Not freedom from suffering, but freedom through it. So if you must suffer, and you must, then suffer for the truth. Suffer for love that's honest. Because when your suffering has meaning, it's no longer a curse, it becomes initiation. And on the other side of that, not comfort, but clarity. Because pain is not the enemy. Pain is the path. Not every wound is a warning, some are invitations. Not every tear is weakness, some are water for the soul's soil. Will you bleed for what breaks you, or for what builds you? Will your pain be a weight that buries you, or a stone you sharpen your will against? The difference isn't fate, it's choice. So choose the suffering that shapes you. Choose the work that burns your lungs but feeds your soul. Choose the truth that sears but sets you free. Choose the silence that screams your name back to you. Because ease may keep you comfortable, but only worthwhile suffering will keep you real. The path is narrow, the pain is real, but on the other side is you, the one you've been dying to meet. And now you know the way. If this message found you at the right time, don't let it fade like another passing thought. Like the video if it stirred something real. Subscribe if you're ready to face uncomfortable truths and rebuild yourself from the inside out. And share this with someone you know is silently suffering. Maybe they just need permission to suffer for something worth it. This channel isn't here to entertain your comfort. It exists to awaken your depth. Welcome to the few who choose the harder path.